Hey you guys, it's Nikita Lene back with another video. I decided to do a video that is all about my nursing journey from beginning to end. Well, I guess not the end because it's still kind of going on. So from beginning until now, just giving you guys just the skinny on how I got into nursing, where my nursing career started and where I am now. I am officially 3 years in the game. It's crazy to think. So much has happened in that 3 years, you guys. It's been a crazy journey, and I also have, I guess, an announcement to make at the end of this about what's next for me in my nursing journey. So if you're interested, stick around. I really wanted to share my experience with you guys about my nursing journey. It's kind of crazy to think that I've been a nurse for 3 years. Only 3 years, because it feels like I've been a nurse for 55 million years. So much has happened in that 3 years of nursing. It's been a crazy journey. And so I just kind of wanted to share with you guys what that journey looked like. And just so you guys know, my journey is not a traditional one by any means. This is not your like cookie cutter typical nursing story. And so I think that it's great for me to share that with you guys, just because I think it's important for everyone to know that your nursing journey is going to look different and that it doesn't have to be perfect. There can be ups and downs, highs and lows, and you can still get to your goal of becoming a nurse, and that it's not always pretty. Like, as long as you're still hustling and striving to get to where you want to be, I promise you the end result is so worth it. We'll start by talking about what I did prior to nursing, because nursing is actually my second career, you guys. I started off in healthcare about 17 years ago as a healthcare service administrator, or healthcare administrator, health service management technician, whatever you want to call it. I did healthcare administration in the United States Air Force. And I started off in the military as a slick sleeve, which means I was a E1. That's the lowest possible rank you can have in the military, you guys. I came in with no leverage whatsoever, and kind of just worked my way up in the ranks. Now, the great thing about this was that I had the opportunity to work kind of everywhere in the hospital setting. I started my career working in like medical records and working as a front desk clerk for family practice. But I quickly got moved around the entire hospital. So I've worked in pediatrics, I worked in women's health, I worked in flight medicine, I've worked in a lot of different specialty areas. I also had the opportunity of working like the back offices, like resource management, and seeing the back end of things, of how hospitals are funded, doing third-party insurance claims and things like that. As I gained rank in the military, I had the opportunity to work in leadership. I was the non-commissioned officer in charge of 2 of the clinics in the hospital when I was stationed in Turkey. And that is personnel reliability and flight medicine. So that's a whole different side of healthcare that, you know, most civilian healthcare professionals don't deal with. And so that was a very great experience. I got to do leadership, being in charge of both of these clinics, and managing and supervising, and so it was a lot, but it was a really good experience with leadership. It was really at that time, additionally on top of that, one of my special duties was working disaster management and doing mass casualties. And working out in the field, my unit was the group, we were the first people in the back of the ambulance in case there was any emergency that kind of went down that was mass casualty or disaster management related. So sometimes we would jump out of the back of the ambulance and walk into a situation where we had no idea what was going on. We had to tag and triage people and do like initial treatment on them. Now, most of the things that we did were like exercise based, obviously. In the military, they want you to play and to practice so that when real life situations happen, you're prepared. So a lot of it was in preparation of, in case something does happen. But it was very exciting to be able to participate in a lot of these exercises and real world situations. And to be the first person out there being able to triage and treat people, and you're taking care of people in very non-traditional healthcare settings, patients that are just lying on the ground, and you're just trying to figure out, how do I stop their bleeding? What's going on? You know, Have they been subjected to some type of chemical warfare agent? And so it was a lot of fun, you guys. I absolutely loved it. But what I realized in that moment is that I can only do so much. My care can only go so far, because at a certain point, that's the end of my healthcare knowledge and an extent of how far I can go. And after that, the nurses have to pick up from there. That's kind of what sparked my interest in nursing. I was like, I want to do more. I want to be more hands-on. I want to be able to treat these patients after that. What medications are they going to receive? What does their treatment plan look like after that? That's kind of where my mind was going. I want to take it to the next level. And that's when I started researching and started working on becoming a nurse. I started working on my prerequisites while I was in the military. I was stationed overseas, so a lot of the classes that I was doing were online, which was unfortunate because a lot of them I had to redo when I came back to America. I started doing a lot of my basic classes, my chemistry, algebra, all of my prerequisite classes. I was knocking those out, and I was working very diligently on top of, like I said, managing both of these clinics in the hospital, on top of being a single parent. It was a lot. I was juggling a lot, but I was so excited about jumping into nursing. So when I left Turkey, I came back to America and I had 1 year left on my contract. I was stationed in Wyoming at the time, which was my least favorite assignment. But I continued to work on all of my prerequisites, and I just knew adamantly, like, this was my last year on active duty, and that's all I could say. I was so focused on becoming a nurse. I had tried to get into the military's nursing program previously, but when it came to budget cuts, there was a lot of budget cuts happening at the time. And the first thing that they usually cut when it comes to budget cuts are the programs that they have. And so the nursing program for the military that particular year went from them accepting like 500 applicants down to like 50 applicants. And for me, because I was at the end of my enlistment, I would have to re-enlist, which means sign a contract for an additional 4 years before they would even accept my application. And that's kind of risky to know that they're only accepting 50 people Air Force wide. And I'm going to sign over another 4 years of my life for them to tell me maybe this year, if not this year, maybe next year, if not then maybe the year after that. That was just too much of a risk for me. So I had already decided that I would get out of the military, off of active duty. I decided to switch to the reserves. And while I was in the reserves, I would just use my GI Bill and any other military benefits to just finish my degree on my own. Now, obviously, this is a big risk because I am a single parent, and there's a lot that goes into financially being able to support a child on your own, especially as young as my son was. He was in 3rd grade at the time. And so it was a huge risk. I saved up as much money as I could. Obviously, I was living paycheck to paycheck because you don't really make a lot of money as an E5 in the military. So I was like scraping pennies together, using my financial aid to shove into savings in order to be able to make this transition. And we left Wyoming after exactly 365 days and decided to move to Texas and start my nursing career there. Now, something else that I did forget to mention to you guys is that I did not just get out of the military when I left Wyoming. When I came to Texas, I actually transitioned from active duty Air Force to the reserves. So the reserves, for those of you who don't realize, there's active reserves and there's inactive reserves. And the active reserves, you are required to fulfill a certain amount of hours. So you have drill 2 weekends a month where you have to go and you do drill on Sundays. It's Saturdays and Sundays, and it's like the entire day. And then you have 2 weeks of training per year that you have to fulfill. And this was very hard for me at the time because I was new to the Dallas area, and although I had family in the area, it wasn't family that I could drop my kid off with while I go. I realized very quickly that the child care services in the area, there was nothing that was really accommodating to the hours of me having to drive all the way out to the Air Force base and be there by 6 o'clock in the morning. There was nothing that was going to be open from 5 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night to accommodate keeping my son for that entire day. I quickly realized that the reserves was not going to work for me, and I also got into it with my first sergeant, who was very, 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 very rude and was not really willing to work with me or or help me out with resources or anything, which is part of their job as a first sergeant. But anyways, I quickly realized that active reserves was not going to work for me, so I ended up switching from active reserves to inactive reserves, and I stayed in the reserves for the majority of my time while I was in nursing school. And I did not technically get out of the reserves until summer of 2018. I was in the reserves for most of my time while I was in nursing school. By the time my time in the reserves had ended, it was pretty much like August 2018, and then I graduated from nursing school in March of 2019. So my total time in the military was 13 years and 8 months and a couple of days, something like that. Initially, I attended the community colleges in Dallas area. It's the Triple DC is what they're called. I did all of my prerequisites, and I actually was able to transfer a lot of my credits into an Associates of Science degree. I got all of my prerequisites done, and then I applied to West Coast University, which is an accelerated nursing program. That was a challenge, you guys, just getting through my prereqs. Like I mentioned before, a lot of my prereqs did not transfer over. Unfortunately, they want you to take all of the science courses in person. So all of my science courses I had taken online were completely null and void, and I had to retake them. On top of that, the state of Texas requires you to do a lot of additional like Texas-based classes. So I had to take Texas government and then U.S. government, and I had to take Texas history and then U.S. history, and just a bunch of extra classes that were like, do I really need this for nursing? Probably not, but I had to take it. So unfortunately, I burned through a lot of my GI Bill benefits just taking all of these prerequisite courses in order to even be able to apply to nursing school. Initially, I really had my heart set on going to UT, University of Texas, and I was really excited about that, and I was not able to get in. There just so happened to be like triple the amount of normal applicants than they normally had. So even though when I spoke to the person in registration and she looked over my entire package, she's like, your package is on point, your GPA, your resume, everything, they're definitely going to accept you. I ended up being like one of the top applicants at the top of the list of not being accepted. So that's how I ended up at West Coast University. It is a private school, private nursing school. It's an accelerated nursing program, an accelerated bachelor's of nursing program. Y'all, what can I say about these accelerated programs? They are fast and furious. That's great for people who are on top of their stuff, who are, ready for that challenge, but it can be a lot. It can be very overwhelming because you're taking a degree that's already complicated and you're condensing it down. So when I tell you it's a lot of hard work, because you're really teaching yourself a lot of the material. When you do go to class, you're sitting in class for long periods of time, and you have a lot of homework to do when you get home, but you also have clinicals. It's a lot, you guys. Like, there's no surprise to me that, like, Ripley's Believe It or Not did research and found that the Bachelor's of Nursing and Science is the hardest degree to obtain in the United States of America. So kudos, pat on the back to anyone who has one. This program is not a joke. This degree is not a joke. It is literally so incredibly hard. And when you're doing it in an accelerated program, it's even harder because, like I said, you're condensing all of this information into shorter classes. You still have the same amount of work that's due, the same amount of clinical hours that are due, the same amount of simulation hours that are due, and you are just constantly running, constantly on the go, constantly studying. And for me as a single parent, I still had my son in all of his activities that he was involved in. So while I was at his football practices, I would literally have flashcards. I would be constantly studying on the go. If I had 30 minutes in between classes, I was cracking my book open and studying. Like, I was always studying, which is probably also why I stayed single. I attempted dating in the process of this, and it just did not work because my partner that I was with, he just did not understand why I had to study so much. And so, yeah, that just did not work for him. Because he just needed a lot of attention, and I just really did not have the time for it. I gave as much time and attention and love as I could, but it just wasn't working out for us because he was just honestly more needy than my own child. I spent yeah, that's a whole nother video. You guys, it's a whole nother video. But anyways, dating just really didn't even work out in this time frame because I barely even had time for self-care, let alone taking care of another person. It was just too much. I eventually got through my program. I will say that there were a lot of hiccups in my program. In the nursing program, if you fail more than one class, you do get kicked out of the program. So I failed Med-Surg 1 by less than 1%, by like 0.05, something like that, something ridiculous. I ended up failing Med-Surg 2 as well. Now there's a lot of details that kind of go behind why I failed. There was a lot of behind the scenes family issues that were going on in my life at that time. I had a lot going on in my household because I had taken in 2 of my family members at the time who were kind of going through their own issues, and so they needed somewhere to stay. I allowed them to stay with me. That did not work out very well with me being a nursing student and a single parent. It just added a lot of additional stress onto me, and that played a major factor in me failing my nursing courses, of not being able to concentrate, not being able to study, and things like that. I don't want to get into too many details about that, but who knows, maybe I'll possibly do a video about that in the future. But for right now, I'll just keep it simple and say that it just did not work out for me. I ended up failing Med-Surg 2 once again by less than 1%, you guys. As heartbreaking as it was, I got kicked out of my nursing program. I don't know about every state, but I will say in the state of Texas, it is very, very, very hard to get back into nursing school after you have failed. I will say that I'm very grateful that I had a dean who knew me as a person, who understood, like, she pulled me into her office and was like, what the hell's going on? This is not like you to fail classes. This is not like you to even fail at all. You are one of my hardest working students. You have like one of the highest GPAs and you're always working hard. What is going on? And I kind of broke down to her in tears and explained what's going on in my family dynamic and all of the situations that I was dealing with. And she broke down in tears too. And we both sat there and cried. And, you know, she was very adamant that she was going to help me get back into the nursing program because I deserved to be there. She felt like I deserved to be there. So I had to write so many letters, you guys, so many letters to the board. I had to jump through a lot of hoops of fire. I had to retake the courses that I failed. I had to sit in on courses if I didn't score above a certain amount on my ATI exams. And if you're in nursing school, you know what the ATI exam is. It's like a standardized nursing exam. We have one for each course that you take, each of the primary courses you take in nursing school. And the goal is to prepare you for the NCLEX. Now, there are different levels to these exams according to your score, yada yada. But if I didn't score a certain percentage, which was a really high percent on that particular ATI exam, I had to sit in that class and I had to essentially retake it. I didn't do all of the curriculum, but I would have to sit in the class, every single class, and I would have to retake the ATI exam. So it took me essentially over a year to get back into nursing school, to start where I left off. I had been out of the program for about 6 months, which was a whole nother stressor because I was using my GI Bill to pay for all of my bills. So then when my GI Bill was no longer available for me to use because I wasn't in school, then that was my primary financial, my primary income. So I had to get a job and I had to work during those 6 months, and I had to additionally work the extra year that it took of me actually going through all of the classes that I failed, or all of the classes I did not score high enough on my ATI exam for, and retaking all of those classes. And that took a whole year, you guys. So a year and a half later, I was back in nursing school, picked up where I left off, which was Med-Surg 2. And I retook Med-Surg 2 along with the courses that went along with that. I was so grateful to finally be back in nursing school, but I was so stressed out that entire year and a half about everything. Was how am I going to get back into nursing school? This is my passion. I gave up my military career for this, and I was not going to let it go. I was so excited about nursing, and I was still very passionate about it. So I worked my ass off for a year and a half to get back into nursing school, to get back to where I left off. And I do believe everything happens for a reason, you guys, because that first semester back was like, it was just perfect. Everything about it was perfect. I met my best friend in my new cohort. Shout out to her. I just worked my ass off to get to that point, you guys. That's kind of why I'm crying. Just thinking about it. Just thinking about that year and a half. All I did was cry and pray and cry and pray to God. Like, please let me back into nursing school. Give me another chance. This is where I'm so passionate about this. I really want this opportunity. The other thing that kind of happened during that time frame is that a lot of my family stopped talking to me at that time. But at the time, it was very sad and a very, very sad, depressing point of my life because I had already gotten kicked out of nursing school, and then my family was upset with me and stopped talking to me. So it was really just me alone in my thoughts and in my depression. It was so, so sad. So flip to the time when I'm back in nursing school and I still don't have my family's support. What I realized is that I was doing better without all of the extra family drama that came along with that. I was really able to focus in on school, and that's all I did was focus on school and being a mom and that mom's nurse school balance, and I was doing so well. I breezed through those last semesters of nursing school. It took me an additional year to finish. I was on the dean's list for the majority of that time, or exceptionally close. The semesters I didn't make it on the dean's list, I was like really close to making the dean's list. So I still was very proud of myself. I had made like a miraculous comeback. I was so focused on just my faith in nursing school and being a mom, and I was so excited. And I finally graduated in March of 2019 because I was so excited to graduate. It was just such an exciting time for me. God, I'm so emotional talking about this. I did not expect to be this emotional talking about it, you guys. I ended up taking the NCLEX, and my NCLEX journey was like a whole difficult experience, you guys. It was so stressful for me because financially, I was very financially stressed, and that was my stressor that was taking my mind away from the NCLEX. Once again, I was using military veteran benefits to pay for nursing school because halfway through my nursing degree, I ran out of my GI Bill benefits, so I ended up switching over to my VOC rehabilitation benefits. When I finished my nursing program, they messed up my pay where they just stopped paying me. So for 2 months, I was not getting paid, and I was so stressed out because I was like, I need to hurry up and take the NCLEX so I can start working, but I didn't feel like I was prepared to take the NCLEX, and so that stressed me out so bad, and I couldn't afford to buy to pay for UWorld or any of the other resources I wanted to pay for. I was trying to do my school's nurse ATI program, but it was so long and drawn out that it was just taking too long, and it was overly stressing me. So I just studied my butt off on my own using my ATI books and my NCLEX study review book, and I went in and took the NCLEX, and I thought that I failed, you guys. I legit thought that I failed. I thought I was going to go in, finish the bare minimum amount of questions, and that I was going to pass. And really and truly, that is not what happened. My mind was so stressed out about if I fail this test, I have to wait a certain amount of time before I can retake it. After that, what that's going to look like, and how long it's going to take before I can get a job and start working, and I have bills due and I have no money, and I was so stressed out, you guys. I ended up not being able to concentrate, and when I tell you I got every single question on the NCLEX, what is it, 250 something questions you can get? I got every question. So when I got to the end of it and it finally shut down, I went to my car and I cried. And what made it even worse is that I took my test on a Friday, so I could not even get my results the next day. I was not going to be able to get my official results until Monday. So I just thought that I failed. I bawled my eyes out. I was so exceptionally stressed out. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I just cried and prayed that whole freaking weekend because I just knew in my mind that I failed. Now, both of my best friends from nursing school had already passed the NCLEX, and they told me to go do the trick where you try and register again. And if it doesn't go through, then that means you pass. So I did the trick and it didn't go through. But still in my mind, I was like, I need real confirmation. I'm pretty positive that I failed this exam. And I was like, literally I was online looking for jobs like that I qualified for already with my previous like military experience and health service management experience. Like, I'm going to need to get a job, and then I can have this other job and I can study to retake the NCLEX, because I really thought that I failed, you guys. But I did start going to nursing interviews. I had already had interviews that were scheduled. I had 3 job interviews. 2 were in person and 1 was online. The crazy thing is that all 3 of them, I got hired on the spot for all 3 jobs, you guys. Now, at the time, I kind of wanted to work in med-surg, and so I had applied for med-surg jobs, all 3 of them at 3 different hospitals. One was in Houston, actually, and it was at Herman Memorial, and the other 2 were in Dallas. And all 3 of them, I pretty much got hired on the spot. The one in Houston, the lady pretty much offered me the job, and then she said, you know, if you accept, you know, this, then we'll move you on to the next level of interviews that are going to tell you kind of like, that interview is with all of the unit managers to determine which unit you're going to work on, essentially. But I was so excited to get offered all of these jobs. And the funny thing is that one of the jobs that I got offered, the lady, we went through the entire job interview. She offered me a job, like a staff job. And then at the very end of the interview, she's like, how long have you been a nurse? And I said, since March. And she said, March of when? I said, like, this March. And she goes, wait a minute, what? She was about to hire me for a staff job, not knowing I was a brand new nurse, you guys. She was like in disbelief that I was a brand new nurse. She was like, you are so poised and so on point with all of your answers. She's like, I thought you had been a nurse for years. I was just going to hire you for a staff position. She's like, so technically I can't do that. She's like, you've already gotten the pay offer, so we have to offer you that pay, you know, what we offered you, but you still have to go through internship. So that was funny. But I ended up taking one of the jobs that with my best friend. That job was starting a little bit sooner, and like I said, I was in a financial pinch. So I accepted that job, and I worked at a long-term care facility, LTAC, working on the med-surg unit. Now, I talk a lot about how your nursing journey does not have to be a traditional journey, and this is exactly what I mean by that. I started working off at an LTAC, and initially, you know, when you get out of nursing school, you have this big dream of working at this huge level 1 hospital, the biggest hospitals in the area, and, you know, you're that nurse because you work in this hospital. But really, I just needed a job. And I was not one of those people who had to work at one of these level 1 hospitals to really feel like a certain type of way. I wanted to get my feet in the door. I wanted to get experience, and that's kind of why I wanted to work in med-surg initially, is because I felt like that was the perfect place for me to learn all of my skills, hone in on my skills, practice my skills. I wanted to be a jack of all trades, which really, if you work on med-surg, you kind of become a jack of all trades because you take care of patients with every freaking diagnosis you can think of. It was a great place for me to work on my basic skills. So I did not mind working med-surg. My hospital, I did let them know in my interview that I would be interested in moving up to the ICU. That happened a lot quicker than I expected, because initially they told me the hospital policy was you had to work on med-surg for at least a year before you can move up to the ICU. Well, there's kind of like a mass exodus. There was like at least 5 ICU nurses that all quit to go work at another bigger hospital in the area, and they all quit around the same time. So that left a nice void, enough of a void where they were allowing the med-surg nurses to float up to the ICU. And when they would float us up to the ICU, they would start us off with like the lowest acuity of patients according to our experience. Now, me as a newer nurse, I've only been a nurse for 3 months at the time. So the lowest level of acuity is pretty much med-surg patients that, you know, patients who are downgraded, but we're just waiting on a bed for them in med-surg. Maybe there's not a space in med-surg, so they're just going to hang out here until there's one available. And then it just seemed like every single shift I showed up, they would increase my level of acuity a little bit more. So I would take care of like the most stable ICU patients, but they weren't on a ventilator. And then the next time I would take care of the most stable patient on a ventilator. And they kind of like slowly crept me into it to where eventually I would just know to just report to the ICU. I wouldn't even go to med-surg for my assignment. I would just go to the ICU and look and see if my name is on the board. And very seldom was my name not there and I would have to go back to my unit. Most of the time my name was on the assignment list in the ICU and I would just grab my assignment, and it just became second like nature to me. Like, this is my unit. And at the time they were just giving me money to float to that unit. It was like an extra $1 an hour. But I really started to hound them like, hey, this is where I am all the time. I want to get paid appropriately and I want the appropriate training to actually be considered an ICU nurse. Eventually, they did that. I did the training. It was like a kind of like the same training, that the orientation that you would get when you work on a new unit. I did orientation. I want to say it was like 6 weeks. I don't remember exactly how many weeks it was. It was about 6 weeks, and I got to work with one of my coworkers that I've been working with on the unit. She's like by far one of my favorite nurses, you guys. She's just so sweet, so knowledgeable. She's such a great nurse, you guys. She's one of those nurses who doesn't miss a thing, you guys. She's so on top of her shit. And so I absolutely loved working with her. She taught me so much working in the ICU of just different assessment things and things to look for and how to treat certain things. And we did a lot more like hands-on like nursing interventions and things like that. So I absolutely loved that and I was really excited about that. So I ended up working in the ICU. Between my time on med-surg and the ICU, I worked at that hospital for about 1.5 years. I started to spread my wings and started floating to our sister facility pretty early in the game. After 6 months of working for the hospital, you qualified to float to sister locations. So I started floating to some of the other hospitals around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it gave me a lot more experience. I got to network and meet more people. I got to see and do a little bit more as well, because you're not stuck with the same patient demographic. A lot of times, especially in long-term acute care, you're seeing the same patients. Because those same patients are there for a long time. And even when you are getting new patients in, it's not as often as in an acute care setting. So going to different hospitals gave me an opportunity to see more patients and more different, their patient demographic for their particular area of the city. A lot more experiences, but this is also where I met one of the unit directors in the ICU. And she is actually the one who told me about travel nursing and crisis nursing. And she was trying to get me and my best friend to actually go to join this agency that she worked for. She did a crisis assignment in New York, and she was just talking about how life-changing it was for her, physically, financially, and as far as her career-wise, with the experience that she gained working as an ICU nurse on that assignment. And at the time, it wasn't really an option for me. This is like the beginning of the pandemic. It wasn't really an option for me as a single parent to just up and leave. I had talked to my family about possibly keeping my son so that I could go do like a 3-4 week assignment, but they were not willing to help me with him. And so I was kind of in a pinch, and I kind of didn't think that I would be able to do it when I ended up having a friend who was like, look, if you want to go and this is going to be safer for you, because my job was not really safe at the time. A lot of these hospitals were not safe at the beginning of the pandemic. So she's like, if you're not safe, you're not happy, I will take care of your son for you to go and do this assignment. That's kind of how I jumped into travel nursing, you guys. I signed up, me and my best friend signed up to do our first crisis travel assignment together, and that's kind of where things just took off from there. I've been working as a travel nurse for almost 2 years now. I am currently on my 5th travel assignment. And I've really been at this assignment for a long time. I'll kind of get into why when I talk about my announcement at the end of the video. But I've done these 5 assignments, and it's really been life-changing for me. I love the flexibility of travel nursing and the opportunities that it brings. I love the networking, and it's just been overall a great experience for me. So if you're keeping track, my very first travel assignment was in Paris, Texas. That was a crisis assignment where I was working 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. I stayed at that assignment for close to 12 weeks. After that, I took an entire month off. Me and my son went to Phoenix, Arizona and did like a staycation. It was the height of COVID. We couldn't really do a real vacation at the time, but that was the perfect staycation for us. So we stayed in Phoenix for a month, and then we went to our next assignment, which was in Los Angeles. Now, my assignment in Los Angeles was supposed to be a 13-week assignment, but that assignment got cut short and I ended up leaving after I was being bullied and I got physically assaulted by one of my coworkers. If you're interested in that story, there's a whole video about it. And so I ended up leaving my assignment in LA early, and I got another contract with the same crisis contract company, and we literally drove straight from LA to El Paso. We left LA on like a Thursday. We took 2 days to get to El Paso, and I started orientation for my new job on Monday. Like, it doesn't get any sweeter than that. And that crisis job obviously paid a lot more than just a regular travel assignment. So it really worked out to my advantage. So we stayed there in El Paso for about 8 weeks, and we came on back to Texas. I came back to Texas because I had something that I previously already had scheduled. So I just came back. We ended up spending 2 months back. I say back to Texas, back to Dallas. El Paso is in Texas still. So we came back to Dallas. We stayed in Dallas for about 2 months. And then after that, we took an assignment in Louisville, Kentucky. That assignment was a doozy, you guys. That was like, the numbers had dropped, but there was still a lot of chaos going on. And so that assignment was a hot mess. But I stayed there. Originally it was an 8-week assignment. I extended 2 additional weeks kind of for timing purposes. I was trying to time coming back to Dallas at a specific time. So when we left Louisville, we came back to Dallas to take some courses. I wanted to get some certifications under my belt because I'm in the process of becoming an entrepreneur, starting a second business. For those of you who don't know, I already have one business. I have a business called New Nurse on the Block where I coach new nurses, and I do online mentorship and programs for new nurses, teaching them everything that you don't learn in nursing school. I guess I probably should have included that because it is a part of my nursing journey, right? But I have now owned New Nurse on the Block for 2 years now, but I'm transitioning into starting a second business. And so I really wanted to get some courses under my belt so that I could do like some med spa stuff. So I took a class in Dallas, and it was about like laser lipo, cavitation, wood therapy, lymphatic massage and drainage, butt enhancement, and all sorts of, like, all of it was jam-packed into one class. Sauna detox as well. Like, it was a really fun class. I learned so much, and I got certified in all of those different things so that I can do them on my own, which was a great side hustle, an additional way to make money. My whole idea and point is to kind of have freedom, have financial freedom and physical freedom where I'm not stuck with one hospital or with one job or with one specialty, but I am just using my nursing license to its full capacity and doing whatever it is I want to do with my nursing license, and having the flexibility of having multiple incomes. As a single parent, raising a child on my own is not cheap. As they get older, you're not as stressed about like formulas and diapers, but now I have the point where my child is a teenager and I'm worried about college and buying him a car and, the expenses that come along with having a teenager. So financial stability is so important to me. And for me, that includes always having multiple forms of income. So this for me was just a perfect fit, another great way for me to use my nursing license and to kind of venture out and be independent. I took those courses, and then right after that, we shimmied on to Austin, Texas. Originally, I had a contract lined up here, but they, at the last minute, tried to change the pay, and I was like, skirt, that's not going to work for me. So I did not take that job. I started working per diem, working in the PACU. And I have a whole video about that too, PACU versus ICU, and how I like which one I like more, what my experience was going from the ICU to the PACU. So if you're interested in that, I have 2 separate videos on that. ICU versus PACU, which is my favorite, as well as my transition from the ICU to the PACU. That was perfect for me because I knew that I had an upcoming trip back home to Alaska. It gave me the flexibility to work whatever days I wanted, however many hours I wanted, for however long. And I did that for, I said 4 weeks, but I really think it was closer to like 6 weeks total before I got on the plane to go back home to Alaska. When I came back from my first trip home to Alaska, my first of 3, you guys, I started working at my job that I'm currently at right now and have been at for several months now. I continue to extend my contract here at this hospital Not necessarily because I'm in love with the hospital, but I am in love with Austin, you guys. Austin has grown on me tremendously, and I'm so in love with Austin. I'm really kind of in limbo right now because I'm really thinking about officially moving here to Austin, leaving Dallas, officially moving here to Austin. But I'm really on the fence about it. I'm really just trying to figure out where I can make my nursing license stretch the most and what is going to be the best for me and raising a family, because I want to settle down. I want to plant, roots. But where is going to be the best place for me to plant roots for my son to finish high school? That's ultimately the big decision that I have to make. That's kind of where I am in my nursing career right now, you guys. I am kind of wrapping up my 5th assignment, and I am probably going to go back to the PACU. That's what I'm leaning towards, is going back to the PACU just for like a month or two to give myself a break away from an ICU. The ICU has been very, 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 very stressful lately. And the hospitals not only are like cutting people's contracts, but they're also cutting nurses' pay. So it's kind of like, why am I here stressing myself out in the ICU? I feel like it would just be a little bit more lighthearted for me to just go back to the PACU for a little while. And I'm not going to lie, it is a pay cut to go back to the PACU. PACU does not pay as much as ICU. I think the ICU pays as much as it does because of the stress that you're going to deal with in the ICU. But I think mentally and physically, that's what's best for me, is to go back to the PACU for a little while and to give myself a mental and physical break. So that's kind of where I am right now in my nursing career. And I literally just hit, as of this month, this is my 3-year mark of not necessarily graduating, because it is May. I graduated in March, but I passed my NCLEX in May. So I have been a licensed nurse for 3 years, you guys. 3 years. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, that whole journey that I just went over with you guys in that 3-year period, that's amazing to me to know that I served on active duty, in the reserves, transitioned into nursing, all of that within this time frame. It's been a rocky road. It's been a journey, but I'm so blessed to be where I am today. I'm so blessed to have my nursing license and the flexibility that comes with having my license, to be able to be my own boss or to work in a hospital, to be able to do whatever I want to do with my license is the most beautiful thing about having a nursing license. So if you're thinking about going to nursing school, or if you're in nursing school and you're like, why am I putting myself through this stress? Keep pushing. Keep pushing. I promise you it's going to be worth it. Your nursing journey doesn't have to be a traditional journey for you to get to where the heck you're going. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. I promise you, every tear that you cry, every stupid care plan that you write, every stupid simulation and CPR that you do in those dummies, every single one of those things is going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. When you get to the end, you'll realize why you put yourself through such stress and agony, but it's going to be so worth it to have the freedoms that come with having your nursing license and the flexibility that comes with it, and to have the career of your dreams. It's going to be so worth it. I guess that's all that I have, you guys. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you for joining me on my journey, and for allowing me to use this platform to share my journey with you guys. It has been a rocky road. There's been a lot that's happened in between, but I'm so blessed to be where I am today, and to be able to say that I've been able to have an impact on so many people in their health and their healing journeys is a blessing. To be able to have God use me and my hands and my mind to help others and to be a blessing to others, I don't take that for granted at all. So thanks again for joining me, you guys. I love you guys so much, and until next time, take care.